Hello and welcome to Ideas with Hello and welcome to Ideas with Diana on this March 15th, 2022. Today's show is about Russiaphobia and about falsely hating people who are not involved in this war in the Ukraine and who are innocent. Let me give you an example. Today, I was watching Dr. Phil, and I'm glad he had a segment about Russiaphobia regarding a restaurateur who owns a restaurant in San Diego and whose family has been receiving um, obnoxious, I'll use that word, but there's a stronger word for it, calls just because they're perceived to be Russian, even though they are Armenian. It were people calling in and saying very, very terrible things and blaming them for things that they never did just because they have ancient hatred of what happened in the past. Here's my point. Anyone who is Russian, Polish, Slavic, Prussian, Ukraine, Belarus, and then the United States, or they're not actually carrying a gun and fighting, they're not your enemy. They're not your enemy. It's like this is getting ridiculous. It's almost like what happened with Donald Trump's son when he had dinner at the west side on the west side of Chicago a few years ago. During a few years ago, they had protests against Donald Trump holding up this big baby blimp that they and some people really on a newscast really got into Trump. I mean, I stopped watching Stephen Colbert because the way every night he do a voiceover voicing, and the reason why I stopped it because when I was in grade school, um, and also when I get nervous, I have trouble pronouncing the letter R, and I was really crushed about that in Milwaukee about that. So being a different kid, we had to have speech therapy and actually be pulled out of class to have a speech therapist because I couldn't pronounce the letter R. And that's what this thing with Stephen Colbert. That's why I don't watch Stephen Colbert shows much anymore. Even though I thought at one time I thought I support him. I thought he was a great comedian, great social commentarist. I did watch him last night, and I will maybe I'll consider it again. But also I watched Jimmy Kimmel, but I still don't like Trump is no longer president, so he's allowed to have a public life. No more political jokes. But the point is this: in this nasty war that has occurred, um, the thing is though, there's a lot of things where people are saying, "Well, oh, we hate all Russians. We hate all Russian people." Well, let me give you a little history lesson. Prior to the aftermath of World War One, the borders of Europe were very different. For example, like with my grandparents, my grandparents came to this country. Um, the part of Poland where my grandparents lived, the border changed many different times. So one point is part of Russia, one point is part of Germany, one part is part of Prussia. So when my grandfather came on, he is actually um, came from part of Poland at that time, which is considered part of Prussia, which is basically people of Polish and Russian who have intermixed and married and have common cultures. And but basically after World War One, that it became Poland. So basically it became Poland. So basically my ancestry became Polish German rather than Prussian, no Prussian German Norman. So, but the point is, basically with my family's ancestry, regarding people saying, "Well, oh, we don't want to, we hate all Russians." This is a very old, nasty uh, ethnic thing that's been going on for a long time. And just to give you an example, how old it is even in the U.S. My dad, when he ran for alderman in 1975 in the city of Kenosha, he had a lot of people vote for him, and it was a very close race, and he lost. And what happened? They had the next day they had commentary, and they had one alderman down in Kenosha says, "Well, we don't want any Russians or communists in here." And my dad was neither communist nor Russian. He was actually Republican. He worked as a military contractor with a three-star general from the United States Army Air Force, for those who remember what that is. And I worked as a military contractor with the three-star general during the first Gulf War and afterwards up to the early 2000s. My uncle served in the Navy. My grandfather served in the Army. My grandfather on my mother's side served in the Navy. And many of my friends are military buddies that have served during Vietnam and the Vietnam era. I'll say the Vietnam era because actually was Vietnam Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. It was a police action, not a war, but those who were sent over there knew that they were actually sent into fighting a war, not a police action. But the point is this: when we allow hysteria to get to a very hard point where we say, "Oh, all Russians are evil," or all this kind is evil, or this group is evil because of this war going on, such and such. We're really doing a great disservice to us in our society because, for example, in England, in Europe, there's one piano competition, and one Russian pianist was not allowed to perform. Well, what happens? This Russian pianist is not a member of the Russian government. He's an artist. He's a citizen like everyone else in the world. And what happens? He happens to play the piano, but basically he's being penalized for being to a Russian, and if you're even Russian, that's considered being the enemy. No, it's not. There are many people in Russia who are protesting right now that are getting prison terms. There are many people. There's one person I saw in last night's news on Milwaukee in a Russian newscast. They held up a sign in English saying, "Stop the war," and she was promptly arrested and sent to 15 years in prison. There's been 3,000 people. And even in this war in Ukraine, I'm of the group that still believes in getting multiple news sources. Even though RT has been banned from YouTube and from other sources, I can still get RT on my TV app, and I watch it as an observer, as a scientific observer, listening to both sides. And when you listen to both sides, one common thing that comes up that's not brought out when I see CBS or NBC or others like this is um, how many, if you were to ask people, how many people would know that basically on both sides of this conflict, the Russian troops that are basically that have walked away from their positions in battlefield and stopped fighting and surrendered to Ukrainians, and there are Ukrainians who have stopped fighting as well like that though. That basically the two that the people realize that there needs to be a way to get to a certain peace thing to stop this fighting rather than destroying each other, destroying buildings and everything else. And in 18 days, they've done more damage than everyone would have feared in a nuclear war. It's going to take 20 years for Ukraine to rebuild, if even that. Also, for the Russian people, how many people are aware? Now, this is from listening to both sides of the story, Ukraine and Russia, that at latest count, there's 6,000 Russian soldiers who are dead or wounded, and there are 4,000 Ukraine soldiers and civilians who are dead and wounded. It's 10,000 people in addition to the 14,000 people who are dead or wounded in the 8 years that this issue has been brewing. So, 24,000 people. That's not brought up on the news either. Um, and my point is this: we can. I value the Ukraine people for fighting for the country and their bravery for doing so. And I'm glad that they're doing it. However, though, I mean, I still wonder basically if it's like this, if there's like two, like if it's a bunch of people wanting to watch the red ants and the black ants fight each other. I mean, you have one group that promised Ukraine, oh, quick, oh, take this and you can go join NATO and join the European Union right away. Then soon as the sunshine faded and the sunshine faded, this invitation became like fair weather Johnson. Well, it's raining out. I'm sorry, I can't do this. It's, and that's Fairweather Johnson's American phrase of someone who treats you well when the sun is shining and things are great, but when you're in trouble, oh, who are you? Have we ever met? And that's why I feel like what the Ukraine's going through with the EU, and with Russia. I mean, basically, it's a case where maybe there's something said, maybe there are other papers, but it's like a case where last night I saw a news report about this one European official said, well, we made some mistakes in how we dealt with Russia and how we talked to Russia. Sorry, uh, I wish you would have come to that conclusion, announced that maybe about 2 months ago before you pushed someone to actually start a war. Now you admit that you made a mistake. Okay, well, maybe there's a way that this can still be resolved. But the problem is right now there's going to be a lot of people that are going to die, a lot of people who are going to die for defending their own country. And again, it's again like to this one person in the European Union made this comment. Some of the other people, if you're really going to be wishy-washy, like basically like this thing with Georgia, oh, Georgia, come on, join us. We'll give you right away to join the European Union and become part of NATO, and we want you to have NATO exercises. That's going to escalate everything. We're going to go from Ukraine, we're going to go to a big world war, and we're going to have instead of frontline at Poland, we're going to have the front line pushed all the way over to France, and this is going to become worse than the first Gulf War. The first Gulf War had 1 million troops. This is going to become worse than Bosnia. I mean, all these side people that want to be armchair generals, they like I see this one thing from this one news service on YouTube. They have all these maps about troop movements, and it's one thing for people to want to play war at a war game club and just keep it private, but when you go on YouTube and you sort of egg on the red ants and the black ants fighting like this, the Ukraine people are not red ants and black ants to be used as sport. Neither are the Russian people to be used as sport either. And the thing is, when there's this false Russiaphobia about blaming all Russians for doing things and stuff like that. Oh, hold on just a minute. Oh, hey, Dave, come on in and just finish that podcast. Just come on in and just have a seat. I'm just finishing.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just finishing up a podcast, so go ahead. Oh, just have a seat on the sofa. Have a seat. Yeah. Oh, that's my neighbor Danny. I'm going to help him with something with his photos thing. But just finishing up, this Russiaphobia or this other phobia. It's like some people have phobia against anyone. Like I've gone through phobia because I'm Polish. I'm Polish German, but I'm Polish German the wrong way. My dad's Polish and my mother's ancestry is German. But if it's the other way around, I wouldn't have gone through a lot of stuff, discrimination I went through in Milwaukee, for example.
The doctor actually called me this morning, my hearing doctor.
Oh, good. I'll finish up. Let me just finish up here.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. But my final point is about this. When I worked in Milwaukee, I used to have to make dinner reservations for dates under my mother's name was Schultz, because if I made it under Konecki, I'd face discrimination due to Polish discrimination that exists in Milwaukee. So please, let's stop this ethnic discrimination, old ethnic hatred. We've had enough wars. We have enough people killed. Let me know what you think. You can reach me on Twitter at Diana1A. And I'd like to thank you for listening to Ideas with Diana.